Good afternoon, everyone. It's high noon. It's 12 o'clock. So what we'll do is, Chassie, you can go ahead and introduce our speaker and get started. But I just want to welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn, and thank you for taking the time to part of your day to be a part of this ongoing discussion. So with that said, Chassie, turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Would like to welcome you to today's Lunch and Learn. We are so excited to have Dr. Kevin L. Brooks. He is the newly minted director of the Multicultural Center. We're going to give him our full attention today, and we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. Again, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being with us in this moment for today's conversation on DEI and well-being. What I would like to focus on today is a topic that we have a lot of familiarity with in different ways, and that's love. And I want to talk about love as a methodology, love as an emotion, and love as an action. So at this point in time, in our experience, there's a lot of challenges that we face. There's a lot of circumstances that we're dealing with, and we want to be there for one another. We want to be supportive of one another. We want to love and care for one another. And so my experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion has led me on a journey where love is the foundation of that work. Love is the actions and the tactics that are used to bring us together, to establish a deeper connection with one another, a deeper and more meaningful connection with one another. And so if we haven't had the opportunity to meet, I'd like to share with you some things about me that can help us get to know one another in the interim until we meet and be able to have a conversation and interact with one another. I am going to share my screen, and I think I'm able to do so. I'll do that now. I have a presentation that I prepared for you all, for us today, to engage in conversation. So about me, okay, that's the wrong. I need to stop sharing. Okay. I apologize for that delay. That is one of the challenges that I have with technology. So until I figure the technology out, which I think I have. Okay. Right. So I must admit that I am new to these multiple screens. I'm usually accustomed to one. So now I have two. Okay. I think I am ready now. Nope, that's not it. Okay. Who all seeing on the screen? Who am I? Yes, got it. Okay. All right, very good. So I am not technologically savvy. I think you may have figured that out by now. I am an educator, an administrator, a researcher, school practitioner. A lot of work I do is from my experiences as a coach and mentor, primarily through my participation in sports, all the way up into the collegiate and professional levels. And that's where I learned how to be a relationship builder, someone who works to bring about change, change in action, change in performance. And it was through my doctoral experience where I first learned the understanding of the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, to be a champion for it, collaborative partner and facilitator. So as an educator, a lot of the work that I do is around heritage teaching. So someone who directs a multicultural center, someone who's familiar with intercultural experiences, programs, and services, someone who builds relationships, establish connections, and work towards transforming those relationships. It's something that the work that I've done through my disciplinary training in Black Africana Studies, where we focus on the Black Studies paradigm, which is centrism or centeredness, critical analysis, and empowerment. And so the work that we do in Black Africana Studies focuses on a mission of academic excellence and social responsibility with a cultural grounding. And so that cultural grounding is significant in ways because we meet a lot of people through the work that we do, through our hobbies and activities. And that gives us the opportunity to share and exchange our values, our beliefs, our principles, the things that matter most to us. And when we're able to share and exchange that type of information, it gives us an opportunity to establish a deeper connection and a more meaningful relationship. And so it's through those experiences and through the work that we do here at the Multicultural Center in the Office of Equity and Inclusion is to create opportunities for us to interact, opportunities for us to share and exchange, talk with one another, get to know one another, so we can establish a deeper and more meaningful relationship. And so we can bring about positive experiences and help people live better lives. And so someone who's trained in Black Africana Studies, I focus a lot of my work on heritage and heritage teaching. So the next slide that you will see, if I could do this, is one of the philosophies that I live by. The work that I do is based around heritage teaching from Dr. John Henry Clark. Dr. John Henry Clark is was an Africanist scholar and world historian. And in his teachings about heritage teaching, he writes, heritage in essence is how a people use their talent to create a history that give them memories that they can respect and to use to command the respect of other people. Now, the ultimate purpose of heritage and heritage teaching is to use a people's talent to develop an awareness and a pride in themselves so that they can become a better instrument for living together with other people. This sense of identity is the stimulation for all of people's honest and creative efforts. And the last sentence is very powerful and resonates with me deeply. A people's relationship to heritage is the same as the relationship of a child to its mother. So in terms of heritage and culture, we each have a responsibility to advance the culture, advance the heritage, and share our gifts and talents with one another so we can establish deeper and more meaningful relationships with the people we encounter, the people who are in community with us. Along those same lines, I draw from Dr. Marimba Ani, who is an Africanist scholar and anthropologist. And her work on culture and Let the Circle Be Unbroken, she writes, when a group of people share a common heritage, a common set of experiences, and a common culture, an emotional bond is created between them. The fact that a people's experience and historical circumstances are shared over long periods of time in the setting of a culture makes them one. And their oneness creates a commonness of spirit. And so I talk a lot about sharing and exchanging to establish a deeper and more meaningful relationship gives us the opportunity to bring the diversity that's in our community to be inclusive so that we can create equitable opportunities for us to be able to work together so that we create this commonness of spirit. So we grow in together in collaboration, in community to create a sense of oneness through the work that we do in diversity, equity, and inclusion. All right. And so when we're able to have this experience, we have opportunities to create meaningful moments where we're able to honor the past, where we could be present and live in the moment and work toward the future together, collectively, with each member in the community, sharing our diverse ideas, experiences, practices, values, beliefs, and supporting one another so that we can live better and more meaningful lives. Institutional commitments in offices of diversity, equity, inclusion in the multicultural center is to offer and support high quality liberal arts education through diversity, equity, inclusion programs, services, and initiatives that will help us advance our efforts in recruiting and retaining a diverse student body. Focusing on creating opportunities for more engagement, more deeper and more meaningful engagement that will lead to success. Community engagement, bringing forth those communities that are in our surrounding communities, being able to service them, having our students, our faculty and staff going out in the community, working together, creating strategies for better ways of living, healthier ways of living, and creating opportunities to experience longevity in our communities, in our livelihoods, while also focusing on student and employee well-being, teaching excellence, and scholarly excellence as well. And so when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I draw from writer and Black scholar Audre Lorde. And Lorde indicates that it's not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize and accept these differences. Now, my background, my research is on the Black Power movement, particularly the Black Panther Party of the 1960s and 70s. And so you heard me talk earlier about love. And so there's a lot that I learned by studying the Black Power movement and the Black Panther Party that inspired my understanding and deepened my understanding of love. And so pictured here, you see one of the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, top left, Dr. Huey P. Newton. On the right, top right is Barbara Easley Cox. The lower right is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the lower left is Fred Hampton. And I think it is displayed on your screens like that as well. And if not, we can do something to work that out. And so the DEI philosophy that I endorse is powered by love, solidarity, and change. and community. Love, solidarity, change, and community. And so love. And so in my early studies of the Black Panther Party, reading Dr. Huey P. Newton's work, To Die for the People, is where I got his understanding and the Black Panther Party understanding of love. And, you know, he writes in his book that you truly have to love someone in order to be a servant. So love is what's guiding the work that we do to support one another, is how we provide that service is through love. And so Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party had to say this about solidarity, is that you don't fight racism with racism, you fight racism with solidarity in its efforts to work with different groups for a common cause to improve the public good and the public life of individuals who have been facing challenges throughout the years with obtaining a better livelihood. Change, Barbara Easley Cox said, change, to be able to change yourself is a revolutionary act. It's a true revolutionary act to be able to change yourself. And then community, with Dr. Martin Luther King, we're familiar with the beloved community, and his ideal about the beloved community focuses on nonviolence. And when we can get to a stage of nonviolence, then the next phase would be reconciliation. It gives us something that we can work together on to create something new, a new way of living where everyone feel welcome, feel included, feel like they belong, and that they feel supported. And so this is something that I was writing about based on the work of Dr. Huey P. Newton in his book, To Die for the People. And so before DEI was the phrase in academia, I was saying diversity, inclusion, and equity. And so Huey P. Newton suggested that being a true revolutionary meant loving and serving the people, hence the creation of the Black Panther Party's community survival programs. And so for me, drawing on the acronym of DIE, it developed in me something that I can live and work toward, and to die bring meaning that to change, to be able to change, you know, what I was familiar with, and then going out and meet people and changing my understanding based on this new information, for me meant that in an act of love, I was dying so I could have a fervent commitment to embodying and promoting principles of diversity, inclusion, and equity for all. So to be more diverse, to be more equitable, be more inclusive, to die is to examine itself critically in ways that bring about positive, transformative social change. To die is to assist and support others in their pursuit to achieve personal goals, to live a meaningful and purposeful life, to increase well-being, to establish oneness, and to improve humanity. And so one of the biggest sacrifices that I began to understand, particularly by participating in sports, is that it wasn't about me. It's about the team, right? That it wasn't about the name on the back of the jersey, it was about the name on the front of the jersey, right? So that's something that I learned about sacrifice. You have to give yourself so that others can have what they need to be successful. And the hope is that you're able to get what you need to be successful as well by being someone who's loving and caring and supportive of others. Now, the hope is that that love, that care, and that support would be reciprocated, that you will also get that, but it's important self-care, and then trauma-informed care practices is what helps us get what we need, and as well as to help provide the sources and opportunities and access to the things that people need to achieve optimal health and wellness as well. And so for me, it meant that I had to sacrifice, you know, what I had learned over the years to be a proper way of living, to be more inclusive of other proper ways of living. And so that the things that I understood, that didn't mean that that's what others understood, that's what others believed and what others endorsed and supported. And so it just expanded my understanding of how to work with people, how to live with people. Because one of the things I learned in sports is how to play, right, with people. and how we work together to create rules that govern our experiences together. And so my DEI philosophy in action establishes a welcoming community with a greater sense of belonging, encourages people to be comfortable and confident in their true authentic selves. It's important that you're able to be who you are, not to hide who you are, because the goal is optimal health and well-being. And so we have to create communities and spaces that people feel like that's something that they can do, something that they can be. Also, the DEI philosophy engages with transparency, openness, and humility. It empowers working collaboratively for the common and public good. And so if you remember going back to the Black Studies paradigm, where the third phase or the third component of the paradigm focuses on empowerment. And so it's through one's own experience, having a critical analysis, which means the information that you receive, right, you be able to critically analyze it, and then be able to work together to create strategies that empower all those in the community for the benefit, mutual benefit of the community and the public good. And so you hear Irby talking about the research, Black Africana studies, academic excellence, social responsibility with a cultural grounding, the Black Studies paradigm, sending this critical analysis and empowerment. Okay, and so the theoretical work that drives the work that I do from a womanist perspective, an African-centered womanist perspective, is optimal psychology through the work of Dr. Linda James Myers. And again, that is the strategies that we put in place to live our best lives, to achieve optimal health and well-being. Also spiritual activism, which is Layli Mapayan, which talks about spirit in a number of ways. And one of those ways deals with the effort that we put into the work that we do. And so in her research and her study, she found that women throughout the world who hadn't had a conversation with one another, haven't interacted one another, still said they had similar practices that they put in place in their communities in order to achieve optimal well-being. And that theory is spiritual activism. And then empowerment by Audrey, where there's self-awareness, there's self-actualization. Self-awareness and self-actualization leads to community awareness and community actualization. Community collaborations. And so there's a number of communities and collaborations that we are connected with: adult learners, girls in STEM, incarcerated men, international students, Latino students, LGBT students, neurodiverse students, senior citizens, students with disabilities, and veterans, and many more are collaborative partners in the work that we do. There's many more in DEI. There's many more that the Multicultural Center will connect with in order to create more inclusive opportunities on campus. Holistic well-being is the work that I spend a lot of time in. So a lot of people think of well-being as mind, so the psychological, the physiological, and the spiritual. There's also other dimensions that we need to focus on, which are social, environmental, intellectual, and occupational, because those experiences, those dimensions also shape and have an effect on our overall health and well-being. And so we want to engage those as well. So a lot of times, particularly on the college campus, it gives us the opportunity to study more about each of those dimensions. And so we graduate at the end of our experience with a degree and we take on a career. And then that also has an effect on our daily livelihood as well. That's why a lot of companies, when they hire employees, they offer these benefits to go along to be supportive of the person in their effort to be supportive of the employer and to be productive on the job. And so again, drawing from a number of studies and looking at research, I came across the work of Cynthia Sturbis. Potential Wellness is the article where she studied behaviors of indigenous women. And there were 3 types of behaviors that were exhibited in a community that she was investigating, and that's living in the norm, living between the norm, and escaping the norm, right? So living in the norm is accepted behaviors, managing between the norm is managing behaviors, and escaping the norm is changing the behavior. And so what was found in this study is sometimes in our daily life experiences, what we end up having is a situation where there might be some behaviors or some practices that aren't really working for us. And so what we'll do is we'll just accept that as it is. But then to move to the next phase is to understand that there are behaviors that aren't working for us. And then we create strategies to make them work for us, right? And then escaping the norm would be a situation where we understand that living these accepted behaviors aren't working for us. Managing these behaviors aren't leading to optimal ways of living. And so what ends up happening is an escape of the norm, which is a change of the behavior. Now, going deeper into overcoming intergenerational trauma in this study is where Sturbis identified the importance of building personal competencies. So this volitional awareness, so this will, developing this will in the individual, which leads to self-awareness, learning to emote, and self-esteem. Now, learning to emote is something that I was able to achieve in adulthood, because playing football, I was always taught that there was 2 emotions, happiness and anger. So I could use that anger on the football field. I can use that anger as aggression. So growing up as a youth, I wasn't aware or fully aware of the variety of emotions that were healthy for me to exhibit. So I learned that in adulthood, right? And so that's a long time to go without really fully understanding how to express yourself, particularly as a Black man. So building personal competencies is one phase. Moral compassing, which is identifying and exhibiting positive changes in one's identity, where there's active participation and collaborating and doing the right thing. And so you have these behaviors that helps to benefit not only you as the individual, but you and the community as well. And so when you have this moral compassing, it leads to this fostering of virtues that Sturbis identified, which are respect, listening, loving, truth-telling, trustworthiness, and support, which are all virtues that are instrumental and beneficial to DEI work, as well as health and well-being. And the methods in Sturbis' study indicated to avoid preconceived notions. So do not assume. To examine patterns of behavior, not people. So people aren't under investigation. It's the behaviors, it's the patterns of behavior. So be open to new viewpoints, ask open-ended questions, and collect information to create themes that all helps with building a more equitable and inclusive community. And the settings that were presented for these processes are settings where difficult dialogues occur, where healing circles occur, where compassionate listening, conflict resolution, and reconciliation happen, right? And so we want to create collaborative settings where we can engage in difficult dialogues. We can experience healing circles to deal with the trauma that we experience through compassionate listening, conflict resolution, and reconciliation. Now, the thing about reconciliation is it creates opportunities for us to talk about what we want, what we need. So each person in the community has that opportunity. Where the reconciliation comes in is that we're not going to always get what we want, right? And so the hope is for us to get some of what we want so others can get some of what they want. So it's not a situation where I have to get everything I want and need, and you're not able to do the same. So again, it brings me back to sacrifice, where, okay, I'll sacrifice some of the things I want and need so you can get some of the things you want and need. And then you'll do the same. You'll sacrifice some of the things you want and need so I can get some of the things I want and need. And that's reconciliation. And so if you've heard me talk about the beloved community, I've also talked about Martin Luther King Jr.'s 6 steps to nonviolent social change, where there's information gathering, education, personal commitment, there's negotiation, direct action, and reconciliation. And so that's where we see reconciliation show up, because Dr. King gave us some practical tools that we can use to create social change. And that's through the 6 nonviolent steps to social change. And so the greatest challenge to DEI and belongingness, as well as health and well-being, is thinking that everything is just fine the way it is. Now, it might be fine the way it is for some, but that's not the case for other members in the community. And so it's important that we bring up these things that's not working for us, that's not working for the community, so we can work together to create these strategies so that there's more belongingness, more feelings of belongingness, more examples of inclusion that is happening. And so again, drawing from scholars in the field, Ronald Takaki, our expanding ethnic diversity of this century, a time when we will all be minorities, offer us an invitation to create a larger memory of who we are as Americans and to reaffirm our founding principle of equality. Let's put aside fears of disuniting of America and warnings of the clash of civilizations. As Langston Hughes sang, "Let America be America, where equality is in the air we breathe." And so overcoming fears is something that was very prevalent during the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. So King talked about overcoming fear. In our conversation at the Civil Rights and Social Justice Education Summit, that was last Saturday, there was an emphasis on overcoming fear, right? And so we can't be afraid to love and care for one another. We can't be afraid to approach strangers, interact with them, be kind with them, be polite, share our experiences, and so that they can do the same, right? Now, they may not want to, but that's okay as well, because people have the right to choose to express the way they're most comfortable with. And so they may not be comfortable with sharing and exchanging with strangers. And so we have to take that in consideration and be compassionate about that understanding. And so overcoming fear is something that the youth of the 1960s, the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s was exemplary in the sense that the civil rights movement were driven by young people, right? It was driven by the youth. It was driven by high school and college students who put themselves in harm's way to bring about social change. So overcoming fear is something that we can do to be more loving and caring for one another. So not being afraid of one another. Eliminating equity gaps. The Office of Equity and Inclusion, the Moonshot Initiatives, is creating ways that the university, the campus, and the campus community can eliminate equity gaps through needs assessments, climate surveys, DEI training, facilitations, and healing circles, community engagement, professional development, hiring student assistants to do this work. And if it's not hiring a student assistants to help with the DEI work, is establishing a student council or a student committee that can be a representative of the student voice, so that faculty and staff can hear some of their concerns, hear some of the ideas, hear some of the challenges that they face, as well as hear some of the triumphs that they are having as college students here at ETSU. And so also to develop systems and structures to support students and student success. All ways of helping eliminating equity gaps, the ways that the Office of Equity Inclusion and the Multicultural Center will be working to support students, as well as supporting faculty and staff as well. The goal of this work is to be more inclusive, to create a stronger and more deeper setting for equity and inclusion, but also we want people to be well, right? One of the highest priorities here at the Multicultural Center will focus on health and well-being through student and employee engagement. So done research, and so here are some articles that help us to understand why mattering and belonging is so important. And so mentoring and access to resources lead to a higher increased well-being. Mattering plays a major role in unconditional self-acceptance among Malaysians undergraduate students. Mattering and dignity engage fairness, justice, and equality. Perceptions of mattering is linked to well-being. Mattering has shown to improve psychosocial and academic success. Low mattering leads to insecurities, self-criticism, and distress. So you have these researchers who've done this work, have done these studies into mattering to help us understand how we can be more supportive of our students, of our faculty, of our staff, and how it leads to increased well-being. It leads to acceptance. It leads to fairness, justice, equality. It leads to psychosocial and academic success, and it avoids these insecurities and self-criticism and distrust that people experience when they feel like they don't matter, when they feel like they don't belong. Furthermore, so you see how it's important to be supportive as a faculty member, as a staff member, is that the research is suggesting that faculty and staff are responsible for providing and validating the student experience and cultivating inclusive settings for student development. Innovative programs and initiatives are needed to help student service members and veterans feel a greater sense of belonging. A greater sense of belonging on campus can help reduce depression, suicidality among college students, particularly LGBTQ students. In addition, members of the campus community play a significant role in promoting a greater sense of belonging for students with PTSD, particularly as it relates to safety, stigma, and campus climate. Individualized support would assist institutions with making campus more accessible for students, specifically students with disabilities. So to reach that, the research that I'm presenting here from these two slides and the researchers show that mattering and belonging is instrumental or are instrumental in being supportive of students, faculty, and staff. Is more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And that's what's going to lead us to higher feelings of well-being. Possibility. Taylor Sandoval writes, U.S. third world feminism functioned as a central locus of possibility, an insurgent social movement that shattered the construction of any one ideology as the single most correct site where truth can be represented. Indeed, without making the kind of meta move, any liberation or social movement eventually becomes destined to repeat the oppressive authoritarianism from which it attempted to free itself and become trapped inside the drive for truth that ends only in producing its own brands of domination. And so here, with this research, we understand there's not just one truth. There are multiple truths. It depends on the individual. It depends on the individual experience. And that's why it's so important for us to share and exchange so we can create these deeper and more meaningful relationships, the deeper and more meaningful connections. And so the possibility of hope, the possibility of advancement, the possibility of self-actualization will happen. Going back to Audre Lorde, again, with the importance of community, without community, there is no liberation. Without community, there is no liberation. And so we need communities in order to thrive and to be prosperous. We need one another to share and exchange, to work side by side in collaboration with one another so we can achieve a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community that cultivates optimal health and well-being for the members of its communities. I want to thank you for this opportunity to present with you and for you this afternoon. This work is very important to me. as I am someone who really uses love as a methodology to create diverse, equitable, and inclusive opportunities for those that I encounter. And so thank you for the time. Apologize for the technical difficulties. I'm going to stop sharing and turn the space over to Dr. Cooper.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. That was indeed a wonderful presentation. At this time, we would like to engage questions from the group.
I'll ask a question while the other folks are thinking about one. Dr. Brooks, using love kind of as your base for this philosophical approach to creating a more inclusive, diverse environment, have you thought about how that could be factored into curricula across the campus?
How I factored in love in curricular across the campus. Yes, I have used love as a methodology in my community engagement courses in the past, where we really spent some time understanding what love is and what love means to people, right? Because there are many approaches that we look at love. And that's why I mentioned in the beginning, love as an action, love as an emotion, love as both an action and emotion is a presentation or a display of caring, of concern, of compassion, understanding. And so it shows up in the work that we do in communities, right? And so a lot of that work involves listening, being an active listener or a deep listener, as it's called, as it's referred to in the field, particularly among education and sociology. And so we train these students with these skills of listening and listening for understanding and being able to put yourself aside long enough so you can listen to someone else's experiences, and that shapes your work in the community. And so when we talk about empathy, whether it be theoretical, philosophical, or actual action that we can display, empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and being willing or being moved enough to want to do something to improve their experience. And so again, bringing in sacrifice. So we're teaching these skills to students so they can go out in the community and work with community members to bring about a particular change in their particular setting that is particular for them, and then collaborating with other organizations and other communities to partner and do this work together. So we're not doing it alone. So yes, there's opportunities to practice these philosophical and theoretical concepts in such a way like King did with the beloved community and the 6 nonviolent steps of social change.
Stacey, you look like you have something on your mind.
I kind of do. Thank you for calling me out or calling me into the conversation. I have on my mind a lot these days, all of the challenges politically with the state and multiple states. And so I don't know if we want to go there, but I'm curious about mattering and inclusiveness and love, the things that you really brought up in your talk, and how we continue. Maybe it's even more important to do in this context. So just acknowledging that, I guess, is in the struggle of all of the kind of pressures to not do the work. So I don't know, is there a question in there? I'd love for you to.
Well, my response to your comments and thoughts is that love really exemplifies the commitment that we have for one another, right? And so sometimes the work is the work, but how we do the work exemplifies that commitment, right? And so again, in the community engagement courses, it's important to show up. And it's even more important that when you show up, that you be present, right? And so sometimes we sit on the sidelines to someone else's experience. And that's okay, because it gives us an opportunity to learn and observe and learn from the experience. But we're there. And so because we're there, there's the opportunity to get involved and getting involved in ways that those that we encounter need for us to be involved or want us to be involved. So it's the commitment, the dedication to the work, to the people, to the community that gives us opportunity to interact in ways that we can develop deeper and more meaningful relationships. Because then it's those relationships that we have where others will take that example of a relationship and then go out in the world to create other relationships that help transform not only the relationship and the individual, but transform humanity as well. So the work, the love, the commitment, and the actions that we exhibit while we're doing the work gives us opportunity to bring about that type of change that Barbara Easley Cox, who's a member of the Philadelphia branch of the Black Panther Party, indicated as a true revolutionary act is to be able to change yourself. And so changing yourself in such a way that you interact and connect with other people to create these deeper and more meaningful relationships is what will help bring about that type of change, that type of solidarity, and that type of social change that King referred to in the beloved community.
Thank you.
Dr. Brooks, I have a question for you. I was curious if you could speak to any kind of tangible, at this point, practical impacts of the Divisive Concepts bill on the work that you do, and as well as maybe some ideas for allies and campus partners on campus in terms of ways that we could be of assistance, helpful, proactive in response, I guess.
Well, thank you for the question. Given that I'm new to ETSU and Tennessee, it's creating a number of examples for me to be more intentional and more diligent of working with others, to seeking them out and working with them, working with others to get a better understanding of divisive concepts, right? And which indicate what you can do, what you can't do. And it's an opportunity for us to be creative and innovative in our relationship building efforts to bring about change. And so it helps us, in my mind, it helps me to think about additional ways, additional approaches, different languages to communicate and to interact with other people to bring about the social change. And so, and that's something that I can use some assistance with because I don't have a lot of experience with this concept, right? Which makes it more meaningful for me to get out and meet you and talk to you about your experiences and the experience of those you know. So you and I and others can work together to support one another. So that means showing up, being present, scheduling meetings, taking them serious, getting there, and identifying strategies how to best support one another. And so those are the actions that the philosophies and the theoretical understandings guide the work that we do, the love, the commitment that we share to one another. Those are the practical and tangible encounters, because that's who we are. We are the practice. We are the tangible thing that Martin Luther King Jr. talked a lot about, but there's not a lot of attention that focuses on is you live truth. So what your truth, what truth you have is what you live. You live your truth. So for King, it was applied truth. So your values, your beliefs, applied truth. And so we work together and spend time with one another so we can have a common applied truth, even though it might be multiple applied truths. We're working together to create what's best for the members in our community.
You talk about working together. I think Teresa has a great question in the chat that says, what are some ways you would like to see partnerships with academics in the Multicultural Center to share these ideas?
So one of the things that I'm working on in this moment is conferences, academic conferences. So I've reached out to some students. So some students will be going to a conference, national conference, to present their work, their research that they've done here at ETSU. And so the conferences give the students opportunities to learn more about their particular profession in academia, right? And so it also gives them the opportunity to understand the research enterprise and the importance of sharing the results from their research with members of the community. And so conferences, things like lecture series, would be effective ways to connect faculty with the work that we're doing here at the Multicultural Center. Great question.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, but just want to again thank Dr. Brooks for this wonderful presentation. Also to remind everyone that on Tuesday, February 28th, we have Dr. Belinda Johnson from Motlow Community College. She will be speaking on the syllabus and impact or barrier to student success. So we hope that you will join us for that lunch and learn. And then if we don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and adjourn for today.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks.